Los Angeles, California, the summer of 1967. The private gymnasium nestled in the hills above. Beverly Hills had been transformed into a palace of athletic royalty for one unforgettable evening. Crystal chandeliers hung incongruously above boxing rings and weight equipment, their light dancing off champagne glasses held by some of the most famous faces in America. The air was thick with expensive cologne, cigar smoke, and the electric buzz of celebrity. A charity event bringing together the worlds of Hollywood and professional sports had drawn over 60% of the most powerful people in entertainment and athletics to this exclusive gathering. But even among legends, one man commanded the room simply by existing in it. Muhammad Ali stood near the center of the gymnasium like a sun around which all planets orbited. At 6 feet 3 inches and 210 pounds of sculpted muscle, the heavyweight boxing champion of the world was in his absolute prime, his face, unmarked by the punishment that would come in later years, radiated the confidence of a man who had knocked out Sonny Liston twice and declared himself the greatest to anyone within earshot. His entourage of trainers, handlers, and hangers-on formed a protective constellation around him, laughing at his jokes before he finished telling them, agreeing with statements before he completed them. Ali was not merely famous, he was a force of nature. His hands, which had delivered knockout blows to the most dangerous men on the planet, gestured grandly as he held court. His footwork, which boxing experts called the fastest ever seen in a heavyweight, carried him around the room with the grace of a dancer. When Muhammad Ali spoke, people listened. When he moved, eyes followed. When he laughed, the room laughed with him. "I am the greatest," Ali proclaimed to a cluster of admiring actresses, his voice carrying that famous melodic rhythm. "Ain't nobody faster than me, ain't nobody prettier than me, and ain't nobody ever gonna beat me." The crowd around him applauded, delighted by the performance they had come to expect from the champion. In a quieter corner of the gymnasium, a smaller gathering had formed around a different kind of attraction. Bruce Lee, dressed simply in black slacks and a fitted black shirt, was demonstrating martial arts techniques to a group of curious onlookers. At 5 feet 7 inches and 140 pounds, he was physically unremarkable compared to the athletes filling the room. But those who watched him move understood immediately that they were witnessing something extraordinary. You want to discover what happened when the world's greatest boxer challenged the world's fastest martial artist, and learn the lesson that emerged when two legends collided? Stay until the end of this story. You won't regret it. The gathering around Bruce Lee had grown steadily throughout the evening. Word spread through the party in whispers. "You have to see this guy move. It's inhuman." Actors, athletes, and socialites drifted away from their conversations to watch the compact Chinese man demonstrate techniques that seemed to defy physics. His punches arrived before they departed. His kicks flowed like water and struck like lightning. Several professional athletes had attempted to touch him during playful demonstrations and found themselves grasping empty air. It was only a matter of time before Muhammad Ali noticed that attention was flowing away from him. The champion's eyes found the crowd in the corner, and something flickered across his famous face. Not anger, but the competitive fire that had driven him to the top of the most brutal sport on earth. Ali was not a man who shared spotlights. He excused himself from his admirers and began moving toward the gathering. His entourage following like ships in the wake of an aircraft carrier, the crowd parted instinctively as Ali approached. Even people who had been focused entirely on Bruce Lee felt the champion's presence before they saw him. There was a quality to Ali that demanded acknowledgement, a gravitational pull that affected everyone in his proximity. Bruce had just completed a demonstration of his 1-inch punch when he sensed the shift in the room's energy. He turned to find Muhammad Ali standing at the edge of his small audience, arms crossed, that famous smile playing at the corners of his lips. "So you're the kung fu man everyone's talking about," Ali said, his voice carrying easily over the suddenly silent crowd. "Bruce Lee, right? The guy from that TV show." Bruce inclined his head respectfully. "And you are Muhammad Ali, the greatest, as I have heard many times this evening." Ali's smile widened. He liked this little man already. There was no fear in his eyes, no nervous deference. "You heard right, brother? Fastest hands in the world. Fastest feet, too." He began bouncing lightly on his toes, shadowboxing the air with combinations that blurred with speed. Left jab, right cross, left hook. The punches whispered through the air with a sound like rustling silk. See that? That's what real speed looks like. The demonstration was impressive. Even Bruce's eyes tracked the movements with focused attention. Ali's hand speed was legendary for good reason. No heavyweight in boxing history had possessed such quick reflexes, combined with such devastating power. Very impressive, Bruce acknowledged. Your hand speed is remarkable. Your footwork even more so. Damn right it is. Ali stopped shadowboxing and stepped closer to Bruce. The size difference was stark. Ali towered over the martial artist like a heavyweight. But I've been watching you do your little tricks over here. Pretty stuff. Real pretty. His tone shifted slightly, the playfulness taking on an edge. But I gotta ask you something, Chinaman. You ever been in a real fight? Against a real fighter? The crowd held its collective breath. Several people exchanged nervous glances. This was no longer casual conversation. This was Muhammad Ali in his competitive prime, issuing something that sounded very much like a challenge. Bruce's expression remained serene. I have had some experience with combat. Yes. Ali laughed. A big, booming sound that filled the gymnasium. Experience with combat? I like that. Real, diplomatic. He turned to address the crowd that had now swelled to include nearly everyone at the party. You know what I think? I think all this martial arts stuff looks real good for the movies. Real impressive when nobody's fighting back. But against a real fighter? He turned back to Bruce, his eyes gleaming with competitive fire. Against the fastest heavyweight in history. Brother, you wouldn't last 10 seconds. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was the confrontation everyone secretly hoped for when they saw both men on the guest list. The eternal question that fight fans debated endlessly. What would happen if the greatest boxer met the greatest martial artist? Bruce remained completely still, a contrast to Ali's constant motion. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried clearly to every ear in the room. 10 seconds is a long time, Mr. Ali. Many things can happen in 10 seconds. Ali's eyebrows rose. The little man wasn't backing down. If anything, he seemed completely unperturbed by the champion's challenge. Ali respected courage. He had faced the most dangerous punchers in boxing without flinching, and he recognized fearlessness when he saw it. All right then, Ali said, his competitive nature fully ignited. Let's find out. Right here, right now, you and me. He raised his hands in a boxing stance, bouncing on his toes. Show me what your kung fu can do against the greatest of all time. The crowd pulled back, creating a natural ring around the two men. Someone shouted for them to stop, but the voice was drowned out by the excited murmurs of spectators, who couldn't believe what they were about to witness. Bruce Lee did not assume a fighting stance. He simply stood, relaxed, his hands at his sides. You want me to fight you? I want you to try. Ali's jab snapped out, not at full speed, but fast enough to test. It was meant to touch Bruce's chest, a playful reminder of the speed differential between a professional boxer and a martial arts instructor. The jab hit nothing. Bruce had shifted perhaps 3 inches to the side, but it was enough. Ali's fist passed through empty space. The champion's smile flickered. He threw another jab, faster this time. Again, Bruce simply wasn't there when the punch arrived. It was as if he could see the future, as if he knew where Ali's fist would be before Ali himself had decided to throw it. Okay, Ali said, his voice lower now, the playfulness fading. Okay, you're fast. Let's see how fast. What followed became legend among everyone present. Muhammad Ali, the fastest heavyweight boxer who ever lived, unleashed a combination that would have overwhelmed any opponent in the ring. Left jab, right cross, left hook, right uppercut, for punches thrown with the speed and precision that had demolished Sonny Liston. Each punch was technically perfect, blindingly quick, delivered with the timing that had made Ali the most feared fighter on the planet. Not one of them came close to touching Bruce Lee. Bruce flowed around the assault like smoke through fingers. He didn't block. Blocking would have been impossible against such speed and power. He simply occupied spaces where Ali's fists were not, moving with an economy that made Ali's combinations look wasteful by comparison. When Ali threw straight, Bruce was already angled. When Ali hooked, Bruce was already under. When the uppercut came, Bruce was already beside. Ali stopped, breathing slightly harder than he should have been for such brief exertion. His eyes held something they rarely showed. Genuine surprise. How are you doing that? He asked, And for the first time that evening, his voice held no performance, no showmanship. This was Muhammad Ali, the fighter, the analyst, the student of combat. I've never seen anybody move like that, not even the fastest welterweights. Bruce smiled gently. You're looking for my body. By the time your eyes find it, your brain processes it, and your fists respond. I am somewhere else. You are fighting where I was. I am always where I will be. Ali shook his head slowly. That's some philosophical stuff, brother. But I'm a practical man. Show me something practical. Very well. Bruce's demeanor shifted subtly, still calm, but now carrying an intensity that made several spectators step back involuntarily. Put your hands up. Guard your face as you would against a dangerous opponent. Ali complied, raising his guard, the same guard that had protected him against the hardest punchers in boxing. His hands were positioned perfectly, chin tucked, eyes peering over his gloves. This was the defensive posture of a world champion, refined through thousands of rounds of sparring and dozens of professional fights. Now, Bruce said softly, I will throw 3 strikes. Try to see them. What happened next lasted less than 2 seconds. Bruce's hands moved. There was no other way to describe it. They simply moved, without any telegraphing, without any preparatory motion that Ali's trained eyes could detect. The first strike appeared at Ali's liver, stopping a centimeter from impact. Before the champion could react, the second strike materialized at his throat, and before his nervous system could even begin to process the first 2, the third strike hovered 1 inch from his chin, the knockout point that every boxer protected with religious devotion. 3 strikes. 3 kill shots. And Muhammad Ali, with all his supernatural reflexes, had not seen a single one of them. The gymnasium was utterly silent. 60 people stood frozen, unable to process what they had witnessed. Muhammad Ali, the greatest, the fastest heavyweight in boxing history, had just been completely helpless against a man who gave up 6 inches and 70 pounds. His face cycled through several emotions: shock, disbelief, and finally, something that looked remarkably like wonder. He stared at Bruce Lee as if seeing him for the first time. If those had been real, Ali said slowly, the fight would have been over before your hands moved. But, Mr. Ali, this was not a fight. This was a demonstration of different principles. Your speed is extraordinary, the greatest I have ever seen in a man your size. In a boxing ring, with boxing rules, you would defeat me. You are the greatest boxer alive. Ali was quiet for a long moment. Everyone waited, uncertain how the champion would respond to being so thoroughly outclassed in front of such a prestigious crowd. Then Muhammad Ali did something that shocked the room almost as much as Bruce's demonstration. He laughed, not the performative laugh he used for cameras and crowds, but a genuine, delighted sound of pure appreciation. He stepped forward and embraced Bruce Lee like a brother. You're something else, man, Ali said, pulling back, but keeping his hands on Bruce's shoulders. You really are something else. I've faced the most dangerous men in boxing, and none of them ever made me feel like that. Like I couldn't even see what was happening. Bruce returned the smile with warmth. And you are everything they say you are. I have studied your fights, Mr. Ali. Your footwork is poetry. Your rhythm is music. In my training, I use your movement as a model for what the human body can achieve. Ali's eyebrows rose. You study me? Every serious martial artist should study you. You have transcended boxing. What you do is art. The champion's famous smile returned, but this time it carried something deeper. Not ego, but genuine connection. You know what? I came over here thinking I was going to show the Kung Fu man what real fighting looks like. Instead, I got schooled. He turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying that familiar showman's rhythm. Y'all just witnessed something special. This man right here, Bruce Lee, is the fastest human being I have ever seen. And Muhammad Ali, don't say that about nobody. The crowd erupted in applause, relieved that the confrontation had resolved in mutual respect rather than conflict. Ali turned back to Bruce, extending his hand. I'm the greatest boxer, brother, but you're something different. Something I don't even have a word for. Bruce shook his hand firmly. And you are an artist who happens to fight. That is the highest compliment one martial artist can give another. For the rest of the evening, Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee were inseparable. They talked about footwork and timing, about rhythm and flow, about the philosophy of combat that transcended any single style. The crowd watched in amazement as two men who should have been rivals became instant friends, united by a mutual recognition of greatness. In the years that followed, both men would speak of that evening. Ali, in his characteristic style, would tell interviewers, "The fastest man I ever saw wasn't a boxer. It was this Chinese cat named Bruce Lee. Made me feel like I was moving in slow motion. Only man who ever did that." Bruce, more reserved but equally respectful, would tell students, "Muhammad Ali is the greatest boxer who ever lived." But more than that, he is an example of what happens when an athlete transcends his sport. Watch his footwork. Study his rhythm. That is what mastery looks like. The encounter between Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali became one of the most legendary untold stories of the 1960s. A moment when two men at the peak of their abilities recognized in each other the same fire, the same dedication, the same relentless pursuit of perfection that separated the truly great from the merely excellent. They had met as potential rivals and parted as mutual admirers, each having learned something valuable from the other. Ali would incorporate elements of what he observed that night into his own movement, adding even more unpredictability to his already baffling style. Bruce would continue studying Ali's fights, particularly the footwork that allowed a heavyweight to move like a welterweight. True greatness, they both understood, was not about defeating others. It was about recognizing excellence wherever it existed and having the humility to learn from it. On that summer evening in Los Angeles, two legends proved that the greatest victory is not conquest, it is connection. If this story inspired you to see beyond rivalry and recognize greatness in others, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that true champions lift each other up. Leave a comment telling us what you learned from this legendary encounter between two of the greatest athletes who ever lived. We'll see you in the next video with more incredible stories from the world of martial arts.